All right, everyone, welcome to the 358th edition of the Holy Backboard Podcast. I am Dustin here in Rip City, and I got my man.
Sage chilling live and direct in Beaverton, Oregon. I did post a blog on holybackboard.com, I think a week ago, talking about the returning players that excite me the most. We got three dudes. So if you are into draft talk at all, please check that out. We got some really nice returning players, and this draft is more interesting than any other draft because of all the talent that is going from everywhere, like the USA with NCAA, G League, and then foreign players. Like they might be the best in the draft. So it's a lot of interesting things in this draft cycle. So if you want to learn about Donovan Klinging, Terrence Shannon Jr., and Riley Kunkel, check it out.
All right, let's dive right in. Talk about the week that was, what we liked, what we didn't, preview the week that will be. A quick rundown. The Blazers went into Detroit, beat the Pistons 110-101. No Jalen Duren. Scoot Henderson gets injured midway through the third period, but Shaedon Sharpe puts up 26 of his 29 in the second half, leads the Blazers to a big road victory. And in the inaugural in-season tournament opener for the Portland Trailblazers, they go to overtime. They erase a 10-point deficit over the final 3 minutes against the then winless Memphis Grizzlies. Shaedon Sharpe with an incredible block of Luke Kennard, and they find a way in OT. They squeak out a 115-113 victory. That was the end of the 3-game win streak. Unfortunately, it came to an end. The Blazers lose by 12, 112, 110 on Sunday night after being up by 12 with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. A untimely and unfortunate 26-2 run. Yes, you heard that correctly. 26-2 run to the then winless Memphis Grizzlies over the span of the final 8 minutes did Portland in, and they are now sitting at 3-4 this year in the Western Conference, just outside of the play-in standings, but standings are a little bit irrelevant this time of the year because you just have so much newness, you have so much parity. I believe there are no undefeated teams and there are no defeated teams. There is just a bunch of teams hovering right around 500, and that's probably how it's going to be for the first month or so as teams jockey for position. They insert and get acquainted with their new faces, and sometimes you got new coaches. We got a ton of star players that have moved in the offseason, most notably and most recently. James Harden gets dealt a Woj alert goes off at 11 p.m. a few weeks ago, and now he's in Los Angeles, just made his debut with the Clippers. And for the first time in a while, there is no NBA drama. And I think we can finally, get cozy. It's daylight savings, gets dark out earlier. So put some tea on, bundle up, and let's snuggle in for this NBA season. Sage, the Blazers had a surprising, I think, 3-game win streak. I would say I think it's important that they get those wins because these are the wins that are going to keep you warm. They're going to keep you awake during the long winter hours. You see the schedule upcoming. It's pretty daunting. I'd be surprised over the next 10 or 15 games if they're favored by Vegas in more than one or two of those contests. So hard times could be coming, and we've talked about this quite frequently. There's going to be some highs, 3-game win streak. There's going to be some lows, getting blown out on opening night, potentially a losing streak coming up, just because you're now starting to face, I think, quality competition. So just enjoy these wins. Enjoy the comeback against Memphis. Enjoy the comeback against Detroit. Like, this is what it's all about. Those moments where you've got a young Shaedon Sharpe, 20 years old, hitting 2 pressure free throws to tie the game against the Grizzlies, because it's going to be the actual, if you care about wins and losses, I think the losses are going to start to pile up because
it's going to roll. It's going to be an avalanche of losses.
The schedule has been pretty nice to Portland to start off. And if you look at that, like, Detroit is 2-5. Memphis is now 1-6. So you
and Toronto's bad too.
Toronto is a bad team.
And then we beat the 2 other teams with major components out. Like Memphis has so many injured players and John Moran on suspension. We should get a win off of them. Jalen Duren is an absolute stud of a center. He
Monster.
was going to put pressure on our bigs, him being out, and then Detroit honestly sucking because their spacing issues and offense is just as
I
bad as
gotta
ours.
be honest. Monty Williams, I would be having a lot of gripes if I'm a
For
Detroit
that
Pistons.
salary too, like it's not
That
just
salary, the length of the contract, I think he's trying to play 90s basketball
you
with
knew that
two
was
bigs
Monty's
because we
style
talked
though.
you broke the news that Jalen Duren was out on the recording of the
Yeah.
last week, and we're like, oh, they could go small and start, or they could go regular and start Alec Burks, or they could go jumbo and start Marvin Bagley. And what did they do? They started Marvin Bagley with Isaiah Stewart. The spacing was off. And to factor in, they start Killian Hayes, who cannot shoot over Jaden Ivey, their
Just
lottery
as
pick.
many non-shooters, bro.
And yeah, it's clunky, and they've got a lot of talent. I will say this: pay attention to Asar Thompson. Everyone is gawking over Wembanyama, and rightfully so. He's a great player, but in less than his 10th career game, he almost put up a 5-by-5
Mm-hmm.
performance, which is 5 points, 5 steals, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, 5 blocks. It hasn't been done since Yusuf Nurkic in 2019, early 2019. So we're looking at almost 5 years that it has not been accomplished. And you have a 20-year-old rookie who damn near just did it. Like, don't rely on the national media to show who's been hooping and who
Yeah.
hasn't been, because Asar has been that dude. Before we get into the Blazers stuff,
Well, and they're
I
saying
want to.
how bad Asar is at shooting, but I believe in his shot. Yeah, it's been like the shots have
He's
missed
scoring
wide.
without shooting though, and
Yeah,
that's what you want to
but
see.
just
He
think
had,
when he does shoot,
yeah,
like he can't be this bad forever when you have like he was like a 38% shooter in overtime elite once he got all this bad juju out. Like just imagine what he does production wise when he hits.
yeah, and I honestly I don't think his shot matters for at least 5+ years, and there's a few reasons why. One, he plays with a dynamic point guard in Cade Cunningham, who gets him the ball. Two, he's very active and aware off ball. He caught Shaden sleeping a couple times, and he
Mm-hmm.
got back-to-back lobs. And three, he is a savage on the beast or on the boards.
No, he's a savage beast.
He's a savage beast on the boards, and he gets a lot of offensive putbacks. He's
Yeah.
always hovering around the rim. He's going to be able to use his athleticism to score. He's an absolute joy to watch, and so I'm really happy for the Pistons, and would definitely give up anything outside of Scoot and Shaden to
Do
get
you
him
think
on this
Monty's going to
squad.
put Bogdanovich has been out and hasn't played? Do you think they're going to do the right thing and put Bogdanovich at 4 and actually space the floor? Like
Yeah, there's no way they're
he's
taking
starter
Asar
worthy.
Thompson out of that starting lineup.
Like you put Bojan in instead of beef stew, and you have spacing automatically. Like
I think Bogdanovich, like a few members of the Blazers, is a great candidate to be dealt to a contender.
they signed him to a big one. I remember because I used to do prop bets on Bojan, and he would always hit the overs. So I saw that they re-signed him. Like I hope that he comes in and makes that Detroit basketball look properly spaced. Because putting a lot of that's a lot of Cade Cunningham isn't the best shooter ever, so you're putting a lot of stress on him hitting like for high percentages without Bojan.
So we're probably going to have a weekly Detroit digest, because they are an extremely fun team to follow and watch. And if you have League Pass, I highly encourage following them, just because it's also one, great to see how other teams are building their roster. It's great to see how young talent that you scout develops in the league, and it's also fun to see, like, okay, these are potential guys I want on our squad. So Detroit is definitely the young team that we will be keeping an eye on. But the big news of the week for the Blazers is the unfortunate, and unfortunately it is unsurprising, injury that Robert Williams III suffered in the second game on Sunday against the Memphis Grizzlies. It's they're still at this point determining the next steps. Whether we've heard Shams report that it could be a 2 to 3 month cleanup procedure, or it could just be a straight up season ending procedure. depending on how Robert feels, how his agent feels, how the Blazers feel.
What's
And
his
this
contract
is
situation like?
Robert Williams has another year left.
Okay.
Um, and so this is the risk you take if you're Joe Cronin when you're doing the Damian Lillard trade and trying to kind of piece it together. Like, okay, clearly you wanted draft capital from Milwaukee and you wanted to flip Drew Holiday. Well, they did the correct thing in flipping Drew Holiday, but then when you go to do that and you get again draft capital from the Celtics, and then you get Brogdon and Robert Williams, you're probably looking to move those players as well. I know it had been reported that they really liked Rob, and to be frank, he's probably like my third favorite Blazer, right behind Scoot and Shaden. I loved what he brought. I loved his decision making. He was one of the few
It was
willing
really
pass,
quick. Yeah, it was really
one of the
quick.
few willing passers we had. Just a great shot blocker, rebounder. Just really enjoyed him, and kind of really bummed that this happened, but when you go out and you acquire a 25-year-old max center in DeAndre Ayton, the need to have an elite backup center didn't
Mhm.
feel necessary to me. So I was always, despite liking him, was always on, we got to find a home for Rob. We got to get some draft capital. Just like for Brogdon, like this is all going to take into consideration what you got in return for Damian Lillard. Um, Robert Williams has 2 years left on this. So he has 3 years, including this year. Next year is 12.4. The following year is 13.2. So that's probably better if you're the Portland Trailblazers, because teams don't like, let's say next year he starts to perform. Teams don't generally like trading for expiring contracts because if they play well, you got to pay up the next
Damn.
summer.
Yeah.
This year, you kind of get that year buffer. So I don't think all value is lost, but for right now, it has been completely erased, and you can't expect to get anything. And we discussed it when we talked about the trade. Like he's had degenerative knee issues since his time at Texas A&M. It's really what limited him in Boston. There's been reports that Boston told him to play through it, and that worsened it. And so you kind of have to question Cronin a little bit there. Like, did
The risk management was bad.
the risk management was bad, and from all aspects of it, it just sucks. I feel
Mm.
horribly for Rob. It sucks for the Blazers, because right now winning one out of 30 teams wins a championship, and you're really up against it. Like if you're looking even 5 years, we've talked about Detroit, we've talked about OKC. You got a 7-4 Frenchman in San Antonio who's going to be a huge roadblock. You are competing with other young cores, and you need to pile up as many assets as possible to make sure that you've got the best chance. And I know it's maybe nitpicking, but even a first round pick can be the difference between maybe drafting a certain player or going all in on another player.
Yeah,
And like you
exactly.
want to have that extra pick in your arsenal. So it's just a really crappy situation. And I think it is going to significantly impact Portland's performance on the court. We talked about the schedule heating up. You still have Anthony Simons out for probably over another month.
Scoot's out officially for Wednesday's game.
Wednesday. So hopefully Scoot can get back on the floor. But those are three major rotation
Mm.
players that are not going to be available. Probably two of the three for an extended period of time. So
Yeah.
really unfortunate because again, like I said, I loved Rob. Whenever I go back and I watch the games, just he's such a smart basketball player. He reminded me of, and I'd been thinking this for a while. Obviously, I'm a huge Shaden Sharp fan. And last year, Josh Hart and Trendon Watford were probably the best at getting Shaden the ball up in the air
Mm-hmm.
and at the basket. And they just had really good chemistry with him. Those players are gone. And I felt like that chemistry had been missing for Shaden. But Rob, in the past couple of games, started to really find him on back cuts and just look for
His
him.
processing speed is
He's
pretty incredible.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
And that's now gone. And so that's another, like, Shaden's one of your best offensive weapons. And then you've kind of limited him a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
because you don't have that player who can get him the ball in easy opportunity situations.
Well, like the easiest and most basic play in basketball is the give and go. The fact is, like when Shaden passes it and goes, the defender almost always chills and takes that breath. Like it's you're just like when the guy you're defending passes the ball, you chill a little bit. But if Shaden cuts and Robert finds him, that could have been like 6 easy points every single game, a give and go. And to have Rob, who makes, like, I think there was a thing where Rose from Blazers said that he had the fastest decision points out of all bigs last year. So you're losing someone with a processing speed that's so fast that could get Shaden those easy points, because I think DeAndre can pass, but I think there's the loading screen for him to make that decision, where Robert Williams, it's like instantaneous. Okay, this is what I'm going to do, and I do it. So
It's
to lose out
instinctual
on
for
that,
him.
exactly. There's like, in there, if Rob played 25, 28, like actual centers minutes, I think he would have found Shaden on a lot of back cuts and a lot of movement. And our scheme is really based on decision makers making decisions for other players. I think Rob Williams being out really does affect him. My first thought when Rob got hurt was it's time for Jabari to really get that third big man role secured. And I think that he can, and I think that he can be an elite third big in this league because of how smart and intelligent and like his positioning on the court is really impressive. And I think that this is an opportunity for Chris Murray to get off the bench too, because if Jabari is going to play the third big, there's fifth wing big minutes available for Chris Murray. And I think that as these young guys show what they can do, some of these older vets are going to find less and less minutes. Like even Chauncey's realizing that Matisse Thybulle isn't really working with this offense, so he'll play 3 minutes and then Tumani comes in.
Tumani even started the second half of
He
the Memphis
finished
game.
games.
Yeah, and I've been pretty impressed with Kamara. He's not going to create for himself, but I love his activity around the basket, the tip ins, the follow ups. He's not afraid to shoot the open three, and I thought he did a solid job in the second half on Cade Cunningham. Like just the length that he provides. He for a second round draft pick, he does not foul a whole lot. Like you never really worry about Tumani Kamara getting in foul trouble. And for the most part, he took on a lot of Desmond Bane minutes too. Like, so he's not just out there chilling against, Alec Burks or Zaire Williams. He's going up against the other team's lead dog. And for a second round draft pick that neither of us had heard about, and we scouted the draft pretty well, you have to be very encouraged with what you've seen so far.
I think we need to slow down on some of the comps people are giving him. But
I don't think there's any need to give him a comp. I just think the fact that you have a second round draft pick potentially being your starting small forward, that's good enough.
I don't see I think he's a 4 that's playing 3. I think that there's always going to be he kind of moves like a robot. So I hope that he and Jabari can get together in the offseason and work on their movement abilities, because I think that he's really good north-south running, but I think when you get him east-west, it's going to be a struggle for him. But I really like the way that he isn't afraid to shoot. Opposing teams don't respect him yet, and the fact is he's taking and hitting shots that are good quality shots. I think he's got the Dalen Terry effect on him. Remember Dalen Terry in Arizona? He could shoot, but opposing teams didn't believe it. So I think Kamara has to just keep focusing on spreading the floor and taking open shots when they're available, because when he gets a little antsy, I feel like he just goes straight into the paint, and that's just the absolute wrong thing to do for this particular team. So if he can just keep that spacing principles and shoot, I think we found a really nice value. But I think he's always going to be a high energy, low usage shooter.
That's exactly what
in
this
the grand
team needs,
things.
though.
Yeah. In the
Like,
grand
we have
scheme
too
of
many
things.
guys who think they're the lead dog, and you only have a couple.
Yeah, and when he got put in, I think it was the first Memphis game where he got put in a position where he had to post somebody up and score. That isn't him. He has to be like Scoot and Shaden have to feed him in order for him to be anything offensively. So once he gets a rep that he can shoot, I think passively he's going to help this team immensely. And I mean, if he can just be the low usage energy guy, I think we found a gem. But I don't want him to be like, local legend status, because if regression happens, I feel like the fans are going to really turn on him when he becomes just a low usage 3-point shooter that plays defense but kind of struggles in lateral movement.
But he's also a rookie, so there's room for
Yeah.
him to grow as well. And I think that part of like being a Blazer fan is like you just fall in love with these random players, and you just
I
love
think
them
it's
for
the
who they are.
DFS in me where I'm like,
No, you don't want. He's not going to get just. He's a winning player. I would say. Like I think he's a player
yeah,
that
I
plays
think pure
outside of the
production
box
wise, I
score.
don't like those guys as much that don't give me statistics. Like, it's my bias. Because he's like a fucking 0.5 points per minute guy. I
Yeah.
don't value him in this DFS mindset that, again, 2014 is when I started doing it. So this mindset has been a thing for almost a decade now, where it's like, I value production more than anything else. And then him not really producing in any way is like, this guy does stuff that I like, but it's like, production wise, he really doesn't do it for me. But at least I can admit that I have a bias towards those type of
Well,
players.
speaking of production monsters, I was really impressed with Shaden Sharp this week. We talked about leading the comeback against the Detroit Pistons. 26 of his 29 points in the second half. Ended up with 29 points, shot 56% from the field, 50% from three, got to the line 10 times, knocked down 8 of them, pulled down 7 boards, 5 assists, 2 blocks, and a steal. I looked it up. The 29 points, 7 boards, 5 assists. I specifically went to Kobe and McGrady because both were slightly raw as
Mm.
rookies and then had pretty good second years. Neither of them put up those numbers in their second year. So I'm just, but to be fair, Vince Carter did multiple times, Kevin Durant did multiple times, Anthony Edwards did multiple times. But I just specifically looked at Kobe and McGrady because I see certain tendencies between Shaden, specifically coming right out of high school, essentially into the professional ranks. And what I liked most from what I saw from Shaden was, and this is where I started to get a little bit of hope, right? You look in the third quarter when he really put the Jets on, and Portland actually ran 3 sets, three of the same sets, him off ball, and he scored taking the ball off of a curl, and he finished in traffic. Defense changed up the second play. Fine. He stepped back and hit the three. The third time, this is again another Robert Williams connection. They overplayed him. He made a quick move backdoor, got a dunk. And I was like, oh my God, they're actually starting to realize how to utilize this pretty talented 20-year-old player. And then you start to see him get the confidence where, okay, he's getting the ball, grab and go situations, and he's just pulling up from three on the wing and cashing it. And that's the one you really start to get excited. That is Kobe, that's McGrady, that's that type of player. That was Anthony Edwards last night against the Denver Nuggets, who just took over that overtime period. And I was watching that and I was like, God damn, I want the Blazers to utilize Shaden like
Like Ant.
Ant Edwards, because you can clearly tell that's
They're
his
the same
team.
archetype.
He's the man,
Yeah.
same archetype. He is an absolute beast, and it's there. But I still think that Shaden's kind of like waiting
He
for.
doesn't have the ultimate green light like
No,
Ant.
he doesn't. And I think this is the difference. I think Carl Anthony and Rudy Gobert, Mike Conley, they realize this is Ant Edwards' team. I still think you've got players in Portland who are like
Malcolm Brogdon knows he's the
Malcolm's like
man.
it's Malcolm time. Jeremy
Jeremy
Grant's
too.
like,
Yeah.
I'm getting up 25 shots. I don't give a damn. And I don't think you have that buy-in quite yet. And so we're
No.
gonna have to be
Can I talk about my
patient.
favorite Shaden play in that Memphis game? In OT, Da set a screen. He and Shaden stepped behind him, got open and launched it, and it was a green three, like perfect release three. And in
46
overtime,
minutes with a cold.
yeah,
That shot was on his 46th minute, and he was playing with a cold. So that is prime
that
time.
was where I was like, that I tweeted it. That is a superstar shot. The fact that he navigated the screen, he isn't the best with handles yet. So he was able to generate space using DA's screen and then have the confidence to pull off the dribble off a screen. It was like I it was amazing. I think that NBA teams are finally like, I played NBA 2K at a pretty decent level, and I see that shot maybe 10 times a game. The fact that he just manipulated the screen so well to generate the space and then hit it, I was like, damn, that's a playmaking sharpshooter doing that in NBA 2K. I didn't think that he had that in his bag yet, especially from year 1 to year 2. Like, remember in Summer League when he was experimenting with step backs a lot and people got annoyed with how he was missing? Those reps definitely helped in generating that space to hit that three. Because
And
if
I
he
also
didn't rep
think,
it out in a game scenario, he doesn't have the confidence to actually take it in the most clutch of clutch minutes, right? That was
yeah,
the dagger.
I think Shaden is the type of player that he's low key, he's chill, he's kind of like Kawhi, just laid back, pretty emotionless for the most part. And you get him in a setting like Summer League, and he even said it, like he's just out there like wanting to support the team. And you heard some chatter like, oh, Shaden's struggling. We see Keegan Murray and Jalen Williams putting up 40 points in their summer leagues, their sophomore years. Like, what's wrong with Shaden? He doesn't really look, people were saying, doesn't look all the way into it in preseason. To me, Shaden, when you just put him in a corner, he's just going to be like, okay, this is what you want. Like, this is not who I am. But when you start to empower him, like you saw in the final 10 games last year, when they said, okay, Shaden, go out there, you're leading the team. He took charge and took command. And you saw this week when they finally kind of just said, okay, save us. He was able to create, but you also, if you notice, we keep saying 26 of his 29 in the second half. That's because he wasn't involved in the offense against Detroit in the first half. He really hasn't been involved in the offense the past 2 games in the first half either. And I don't know if it's a product of the offense, if it's a product of his teammates, but it's something that I would like to see him take initiative and say, I don't care if I'm stepping on your toes. I need to get a couple of shots here. One thing that he does need to improve upon, he does tend to float defensively. Asar
Oh, yeah.
got him a few times backdoor. He got backdoored a few times against Memphis. And had he not been an unreal athlete, Luke Kennard's getting a wide open three.
Yeah.
But he is an unreal athlete. For him to realize, oh shit, I've got a shooter in the corner. He doesn't even sprint, like he turns the opposite direction and still is able to make up that ground and block that shot. Like that, he has all of the tools and the potential that you want in a game-changing two-way wing. And so I thought,
It's weird because like these two players are completely different. But you know how I had the obsession with AJ Griffin when he was at Duke? His shot prep was awful. Like, the ball, his hand was over the ball. It was like Kent Bazemore-esque shot. Like, there was so many problems with his shot, but he made it. Shaden Sharp, because of how athletic he is, he can make mistakes just like AJ Griffin does with his shot prep. And because he's so good and athletic, he can make up for the Kent Bazemoring of his shot or the just flaws in his jumper. Like, the fact is, he is that special of an athlete. So it was like he has just this A plus 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 skill set where, I can fuck up and I can make up for it because I'm that dude.
I mean, Yusuf Nurkic said it last year, like he doesn't know how to play the game. Like once he figures out how to play the game, he's going to be unstoppable. Like right now, I feel like Shaden, we're just seeing raw, unfiltered Shaden.
And
And I
I
think
think
once
once we
he
have
starts to
spacing on the
refine
court
that
too.
game, like once he starts to like you said, navigate the screens and work on the step backs. Like once he tightens the handle and learns the defenses, like we're already starting to see how he's able to pass off of the dribble and set up his teammates. He had a beautiful lob to Rob Williams in the Memphis game as well. So you're starting to see him piece things together. He had a beautiful strip on Killian Hayes in the closing minutes of that Detroit game as well. Like just full on sprint, was able to get nothing but leather and took away a big fast break bucket for the Pistons. So you're really starting to see everything slowly come together, and it's really fun to watch.
And I think that once it's open, like once we have a 4 out, 1 in type of offense, it's going to be so much easier for Shaden and Scoot to do whatever they need to do because there's so many non-shooters on this team. Shaden has to do incredible stuff to dunk it, right? Like if you look at all of his highlights, there's at least one Blazer there, and then his man and the guy guarding the teammate. When we have proper spacing, it's going to be unreal how easy it is for him to attack. Like once we have like guys that fit the what we need to do for Shaden and Scoot, it's going to be so much easier. Like it's taking one non-shooter off the court is just so beneficial. So once we have the creativity to play the guys that need to be played together, it's going to be so much easier for Shaden to score. Like this shit's still difficult. Like he has to have craft to score. Once that spacing issue is taken over, he can just lay it up easily, not have to Euro step and avoid traffic to score. It's going to be amazing what he can do with NBA spacing.
You mentioned Scoot, his hopefully longtime backcourt mate. I thought he looked really strong in the Detroit game before injury. He had a pretty good game in Toronto where you started to see it start to slow down a bit. He's starting to build a really good rapport with DeAndre. I mean, you look at that opening lob from 40 feet for the reverse dunk. He's starting to pick and roll, get some chemistry with DA. DA dropped a couple of easy ones, but for the most part, he's getting him buckets. I love his energy. Even when he's hurt, he's still standing up on the sidelines. But during that Detroit game specifically, like he was, I mean, you could hear on the Pistons broadcast, she's like, "Let's fucking go, Da." Like after a big bucket that led to a Pistons timeout, he hit a three, which was huge, I think, for his confidence. But he was also getting to the rim and he was hitting his mid range. Like you're like, okay, this is the prospect that we saw in summer league. This is the guy we saw in preseason. I think it's starting to slow down for him. It's so unfortunate that he had that setback because I think he was primed to have a good 2-game series against Memphis. I hope it doesn't set him back too much where he has to kind of go back to square one. But what did you see really just in that Detroit game from Scoot?
I think he just was smart with how he attacked the offense or the defense because, DA has yet to show that he has a consistent jumper. He did a lot of early attacking the basket when the defense wasn't set and DA wasn't in the paint. It shows a level of like, all right, this is a little hard with DA just in here. If I can get early attacks and use my amazing bag of finishing craft, like I think the biggest highlight was him doing like a driving to the lane, Euro stepping, and then
Reverse.
kind of float game. Like if he can do those early attacks, it's going to generate a lot of offense. And then he's going to do the Steve Nash pull it out, run outside type of. I really think that once he does the Chris Paul, Steve Nash type of, penetration and then going out and running offense, early attack and then normal offense, I think it's going to be a lot easier for him to score until he gets the confidence to pull up middies. I think though that early attack offense is going to be pretty huge for him. I mean, there's that whole like advanced stats thing that says mid ranges are inefficient, and they are, but those superstars use mid range. So I think we need to. I think Shaden would be awesome if he did mid range shots. I think since Scoot is such a good mid range shooter, if he can pull up from midi, I think it's going to make a lot of difference. But I really did enjoy the way that he was just crafty with how he did initial attacks offensively in that Detroit game.
Yeah, and I think if he's able to get DeAndre 6 to 10 more points a night just off of easy feeds, one, you give the defense another look. You're like, okay, we got to stick with DeAndre. That's going to open up the lane for Scoot. So in this instance, I think setting the table for others is going to give himself more opportunities to score. And he just seems like the type of player that's going to thrive off of getting others involved. Before we preview the week, I want to touch on what I've noticed from this team under Chauncey Billups. Quite a few offensive struggles, and they go quite a few. There's a few instances each game, it seems like, where there's significant lulls in the offense, none more noticeable and I think glaring than the 26-2 run that the Memphis Grizzlies had. Portland was up 98-86 with about 8 minutes to go, and it just went all downhill. They did not score a single field goal the rest of the way. I was texting you and I was like, oh, Shaden's cooking. He had that beautiful turnaround fadeaway, then he pulled up for three. He took only 2 shots after that moment over the final 8 minutes. Malcolm Brogdon's final 8 minutes, at the 5:39 mark, missed floater, made free throws at the 5:11 mark, missed pull-up three at the 3:32 mark, missed 30-foot three-pointer at the 2:49 mark, offensive charge at the 2:17 mark, missed shot at the 1:51 mark, blocked to layup at the 27-second mark. Malcolm and Jeremy were horrendous in that game against the Grizzlies, the second one. They combined to shoot just 16 of 42. They took 44% of our 95 team field goal attempts. And it wasn't just that game. We were 3 for 15 to start the second quarter over a 7-minute stretch on Friday against Memphis. We just I've noticed quite a bit. There's difficulties in making simple entry passes to DeAndre Ayton. Jeremy
Spacing
Grant's
issue,
shot
bro.
selection has just been stinky. And I was thinking, I was like, oh my God, we're getting Detroit Jeremy Grant. And sure enough, I went in and I looked, and you can see when he has a smaller role like he did in Denver, he shot
He's much better.
48% from the field.
Mhm.
But when he goes to Detroit, those numbers really dropped. He 43% in 2021, 42% in 2022. When Dame was here last year, back up to 48%. And what is he shooting now? Pretty much a career worst 40% from the field on a career high 17.3 field goal attempts per night. And you watch Jeremy and he just gets tunnel vision, and he's like, I'm going to put the ball down. I'm going to do a couple dream shake moves. And he's shooting fadeaways over 2+ defenders, trying to attack multiple defenders. Like there's really no way he's looking to pass the ball. There is a tunnel vision there where the statistics don't lie. In 7 games, he has 11 assists and 19 turnovers. And it's not just in terms of the turnovers. It's not just Jeremy. I've noticed, even my best friend Shaden, like every Blazer, it seems like they love driving baseline and then they just jump. There's no follow through probe like Steve Nash used to do. They're just driving up and they're like, oh shit, what do I do now? And it leads to a turnover. There's just a lot of standing around too. Like everyone's spread
Yeah,
out.
well, I don't think that's the player's issue. I think that's
Yeah.
the coach's issue. I would say that the second Memphis game, Jeremy didn't in those last 8 minutes, he missed shots. It wasn't egregious ball hog east west dribbles. He just missed. I think the glaring issue also is the defense. It was just this 2-man game on Memphis where they got Desmond Bain on.
They put
Yeah,
DeAndre in space every
yeah,
time.
yeah. So they have to be more physical on defense, not to just auto switch. And I like last year, I thought it was just Josh Hart being weak, doing the auto switch. But it's the same thing this year where guys that are good defenders are just dying on screens. And I feel like it's like we got to put our bigs in awful, awful situations for them to just get scored on. I think that our defense just isn't sustainable in clutch moments. Like in where defense really matters, like in the last 5 minutes of games, we just get exposed because we put DA in a situation where we're going against a dude who's absolutely on fire both games, driving it to the hoop. I think we need to really not die so easily as screen wise. Offensively, in those last 8 minutes, I just imagined what Scoot would do in that situation,
I
and I
miss
was
Scoot
cool with
so
it.
much.
Yeah,
I just
Malcolm
watching
Brogdon
it.
should not be ISO. Like, let me look. Actually,
Well, I
oh
broke down all of his plays. That was the Malcolm show.
yeah, let me do Malcolm Brogdon on Scoot off because we're like obviously we think that
You're the worst. You're
Malcolm,
the worst offense in the NBA.
yeah,
30th.
and that's obvious, but when Malcolm has a 28% usage, Malcolm Brogdon should not have the ball in his hands this much. We're misutilizing him and putting him in situations he should not be in. Like, I'm looking, I want to, like, he has a 37% assist rate on this team. We're not, like,
For
Malcolm
Sage, for
Brogdon should not
breakpoint,
be
what does
in.
that mean? Like these are all we know
So
what
he has
usage
the
is,
ball
but
in
what
his
do you
hands and is passing it. He is the only assist person on our team. We are misutilizing this catch and shoot guy. Like, he should not be trying to drive at such a high rate. Like, it's not like, I get it. Malcolm Brogdon is doing things that winning basketball it really isn't about, but they're misutilizing this guy who is a catch and shoot, like, amazing guy.
had
We're
a big
putting him
shot in
in
the first
situation.
Memphis game.
We're
Memphis was
putting
up
him
10.
in really bad situations
And, and
for this team. Like,
yeah, it was
I'm
a
looking
catch
at
and shoot.
drive.
Brogdon corner started the rally.
He's driving 22% of the time he's on the court. Have you ever seen Malcolm Brogdon drive that much? He's usually a catch and shoot guy. Like Boston, he was a catch and shoot guy. Indiana, he was driving, but it was like only because he was younger and more athletic. Like, we're misutilizing him and putting him into situations that was just unfair to put him in. So in those minutes where we were just bricking everything, I was like, oh, if Scoot was there, it would have been changed because Scoot, Malcolm just does not have the juice that Scoot does. So in those situations, like if Malcolm was on the court spacing and Scoot was driving, I think we would have won. It's just that we put somebody that's not an ISO guy in a situation where he had to be the ISO guy. His usage is high. His the fact that he is generating 35% of our assists is insane. He's just like, we're just misutilizing these players now. And once Scoot comes back, I think those last 8 minutes would have been, like, we're making a significant amount of these. It's just bad utilization of who we are. And like, the fact is, we knew Scoot was out. We needed to change our philosophy offensively, and we just didn't. Like, we had the game that he was out in Detroit. I don't care. He's out. He was playing and then he was out. Don't change anything. But we had 2 days of knowing Scoot was out, and we didn't really change anything with how we attack. Like, I think if Shaden was put in that situation, we would have been much better. But we're putting a guy that's the least athletic guard in the league. Like,
Yeah, there was just no didn't feel like there's any creativity.
no,
Um
there's not. It's the uh high school ball type of scheme, man, where it's a cut and then everyone moves one slot.
and
It's the
it's a lot of one pass and shoot. It's like one pass, like, and everyone's kind of guilt. Like I think most of the
everyone's
players
guilty of it.
are
Yeah,
guilty of it. Like if, it seems like that's why Rob being out hurts because I felt like with Shaden out or Scoot out, it was like Shaden and Rob were
Rob's our
just
best passer or second best passer if Scoot's out.
yeah, I felt like those two were the only ones making extra passes. Like in that first Memphis game, I thought Shaden could have just rose up from mid range to tie it up, but he cut through the middle of the floor and he got Jeremy Grant a wide open corner three that just went in and out. And that's where you want Jeremy Grant shooting, is catch and shoot, because he's lights out. So it's not surprising that they're the worst offensive team. I just wanted to note that, and things that I've been picking up on. It's I think the
Where
numbers lie. I think the numbers lie defensively, because Portland is technically the ninth best defensive rating
Oh
team.
yeah,
But
that's
I think
fugazi as hell.
it's a product of the teams they have played. I
Oh
mean,
yeah. Hmm.
Memphis is anemic. You've got them twice. Toronto and Detroit, they're not
Without
going
JD,
to be
yeah.
setting any records. And the defense is definitely going to, I think, take a hit. One, with Rob being sidelined, and two, the schedule is just going to really, I mean, take up like you're playing video games, you're upping the difficulty 2 or 3 settings.
So, all right. So I'm looking at it. Shaden's statistics. Where would you want him? So, out of his shots, where would you want him using his mid-range abilities? So
See, I just want him taking more shots. I want more Shaden. More.
I get it, but where, like, do you want 50% at the rim, 20 in the midi, 30 at three? Like, where would you want most of his shots coming from?
Personally, I love if he comes off a screen and shoots a mid range shot, because he can rise above
I
everybody.
think that he
It's a
should
layup for him.
utilize it
Yeah,
more. He's only, I'm looking at all of his shots. 20% of his attempts are mid range. I would I would boost that up to like 30, 35, because I know it's a dead art, yada yada yada, DeMar DeRozan, but if he can hit at all three levels,
you're unguardable.
offensively, he's going to be so much more scary than just dunks and threes. Like I really would love to see Shaden become a 3-level scorer with more mid range, and then assist at a higher rate than he actually is. Those are the two things that and dribbling, but like
I
those are
think
the two
he
main things I would
I think
love
he's
to see.
capable of that right now. I don't think he's being empowered as the guy. I think Chauncey is still holding on to Jeremy and Malcolm, and when Ant comes back, he'll kind of slide into that. So I really do think he's being held back
Yeah,
by
and yeah,
the
totally.
staff.
And like
And that's why it's frustrating, because you see things like the 3 sets they ran against Detroit. If you have an ESPN Insider, or spoiler, if you just go to a webpage archive, you can check it out too. Zach Lowe did his 10 things he liked, and he highlighted that exact scenario, and he breaks it down with video and what Portland did to get Shaden open, how he scored. And I was like, okay, this is what I want to see, especially from a 3rd-year head coach. But it hasn't, like, whatever momentum was gained, it's like it stops, and like they go back to square one. But do you have anything
Chauncey
else?
just doesn't have the juice creativity wise.
No, I think he's good at motivation, but in terms of X's and O's and in-game management,
Bottom
one,
tier.
using his challenge in the first quarter of the first Memphis game was asinine, but then he holds on to the challenge and takes it home with him in the second Memphis game. You saw Taylor Jenkins masterfully use his challenges in that first Memphis game, almost got him the dub. Basically, it was like an 8-point swing. Could you imagine like how much better this team could be if they just had a little bit more of a strategy guy who just knew what the fuck he was doing?
And I don't even think Chauncey Billups is a good inspirational guy.
For young players, I think he is. I think
But
it gets lost on the vets,
look
but
what happens when with Yusuf Nurkic and
he's
all
a
of these
vet. I
players
said
that
the vets, he does not get through the vets, but like he can get guys like Skylar Mays juice to play. I will give him that.
oh boy, the 14th man on a good team gets hyped to play. He's absolute trash. I'm looking. Guess how many mid-range shots Tumani's taken?
This season?
Yeah.
8.
0.
Oh, I had no idea.
Stretch the floor, Tumani. That's all I want you to do is stay in the corner and stretch the floor.
All right, let's move ahead to the upcoming week. Just 2 games to look at. Portland hits the road for 3 games in 7 days, a long road trip, unnecessarily long, if you ask me, especially since they're staying all in the West Coast. But Wednesday, they play the Sacramento Kings. And Sunday, they've got the Los Angeles Lakers. And then Tuesday, they've got the Utah Jazz. But we will just talk about the Kings and the Lakers. Both teams struggling to start this season. The Kings 2-4. They've lost 3 straight games. De'Aaron Fox has been in and out of the lineup. The Lakers 3-4 as well. Again, losers of 2 straight. But we will talk about the Kings. Sage, this was a team when we did our preview where we were a little bit worried that they didn't add a whole lot to the third record squad that they had last year. And it feels like it's going to be tough for them to be competitive with De'Aaron Fox sideline. They don't have that juice. He is their juice.
He is there.
And
juice.
You're looking at Davion Mitchell. I like Davion Mitchell as a backup defender. I don't like Davion Mitchell as a starting level point guard, making decisions and setting the table for the rest of that Sacramento offense.
It puts way more responsibility on Sabas to be, Joker light with the playmaking. If De'Aaron's out for this game, it puts a lot of stress on players that don't really deserve to have that stress. Like they
got
this team for
De'Aaron by Houston without De'Aaron.
They put a lot of stress on. All right, you just have to make these open shots. De'Aaron's going to generate it for you. Just take it and make it. So
they lost a mini series to Houston. Both those are Houston's only 2 victories this year, and they lost by 18 on Saturday, and then they lost by 25 on yesterday.
They just aren't a good team without De'Aaron. He just has that juice, and then Malik Monk just doesn't play enough to be. I feel like he has the creation abilities for himself at least to create enough offense, but he just doesn't have the time enough to play it. So if De'Aaron's out for this game, we're gonna win. And I know Scoot's out for this game, so it's gonna be Malcolm Brogdon and Shaden Sharp really taking advantage. Like without Scoot on the floor, DeAndre really doesn't get as much involved as much. So I think it's gonna be Jeremy Grant, Malcolm, and Shaden having good games. And I think it could be Shaden just driving because they don't really have a shot blocker. Sabas is one of the worst
inside presence. Yeah, this is a game DeAndre would benefit mightily from having Scoot Henderson. There needs to be a conscious effort to get DeAndre the ball down low, get Sabonis in foul trouble. It's a game that they should win, but Rob Williams being out really hurts. Like if DeAndre gets into foul trouble, which he has in the past, that could be tough. I'll be interested to see what they do with Matisse Thybulle. Could this be the game where we finally see more starting Kamara and then we get Chris Murray Jabari minutes? Like that's interesting to me.
I really think that I see it with Jonas Valanciunas a lot in New Orleans, where he starts and plays 3 minutes and gets on the bench. I really think that could be Matisse Thybulle. If there is a game where he can be effective, we'll play him. But most likely he's on the bench for 38 minutes of the game and plays the first 3 of the first and first 3 of the third. Like who does he defend on the Kings without De'Aaron Fox? It's over. It's like if he is
Harrison
going
Barnes,
to be, I put Malcolm Brogdon on.
Yeah,
like there just isn't a guy on this team unless he wants to guard Sabonis, I guess. Like
yeah,
there just isn't a guy for him to guard.
The status isn't out yet. I'll say Blazers win.
Oh, Blazers definitely win.
If De'Aaron Fox is out, Blazers lose if De'Aaron Fox is in. Our contingent on De'Aaron Fox playing for our predictions for our listeners, Sage is +2 on the season so far.
Have I missed a game yet? I don't think I've missed a game yet.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But DA needs to feast. He's the NBA's leading rebounder. NBA league leading rebounder DeAndre Ayton needs to feast. Moving on.
So I was looking. He is significantly affected by Scoot being gone. Like his involvement on the offense, it honestly isn't much regardless. But he goes from Shaden Sharp last year when he was getting the ball a bit to Josh Hart last year. Like it's a humongous dive in what he can do on the court. Rebounding's kind of saving his ass production wise because he just doesn't touch the ball enough offensively.
Portland now gets 2 days off. Thursday, Friday, 3 days off, excuse me. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They probably fly back home to Portland, I would imagine, because it's a pretty short flight to Los Angeles, but we will see. They take on the Lakers, who are 3-4 on this season, and they've got quite a bit of an injury report as well. Jared Vanderbilt is going to be out. Gabe Vincent missed Monday's game against Miami. Hachimura had a concussion. He missed Monday's game against Miami. Jackson Hayes missed Monday's game against Miami. So they've got quite a few players banged up. But as long as you've got LeBron and Anthony Davis, I think that's going to be a tall task for any Blazer team. But I really hope Scoot has returned for this one. I want to see him on a big stage. And there's really none brighter than Los Angeles against the Lakers.
Does Matisse play more because of the potential of LeBron?
Doesn't matter.
We're losing. We're losing. So I'm just
here. Let me rephrase this. It's LeBron freaking James. He's gonna score. He's gonna pass. He's gonna defend, regardless of if it's Tumani Kamara or Matisse Thybulle. If Chauncey Billups thinks any otherwise, I don't know what to. I don't. It's LeBron.
And I'm trying to think, like, how are we defending AD? Putting DA on him is not a viable strategy, and Jeremy Grant hasn't really defended him well, if I remember right. Those two might be 35 and like 15 type of performances, or they could just dominate us for 3/4 and the rest of the fourth.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Both the Kings and Lakers, Portland is their first opponent after a road trip. So there's always that element to be thrown in there, because that can always feel like an extended road game, that first home game back. LA plays Houston Wednesday and the Suns Friday.
So is there a chance that they rest one or both?
They shouldn't, but I'm just more along the lines of there's weird things that can happen scheduling wise. They could overlook the Trailblazers.
It's a non-zero chance that they just rest and beat us regardless.
Yeah. I mean, they still have Austin Reeves, who put up 23 points against the Heat. They still have D'Angelo Russell, who has the capabilities of putting up a lot of points.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be interesting. I really want to look at, obviously, Shaden Sharp in Los Angeles. Like, I don't think they have anybody defensively not named LeBron that could stick with him.
And I don't think you put LeBron in that matchup.
Probably not for a long stretch of time. So
this is a back-to-back, right? So
no back-to-back.
Oh, okay.
The game Sunday, their last game is Friday.
All right.
So what I'm looking for is whoever wins, I think the 3-point line is probably going to win this game. Portland has shot atrocious from downtown, as the Lakers were 8 for 26 against the Miami Heat. So you've got the free throw line and then the bench. Obviously, Portland is going to be without Robert Williams. So then who can kind of keep Christian Wood contained a bit? He's had big games against Portland in the past. He's getting a lot of minutes for the Lakers. Like this, I think, could be a big prove-it game for a guy like a Jabari Walker or a Tumani Kamara that can come in and just be aggressive, rebound the ball, kick it out, and just kind of
force Christian to play defense. Because he's awful. Force Christian to have to defend. Because Christian's gonna give up as many points as he scores if it's a normal game. If it's a heater, we're losing, like for sure. But he's gonna give up points. So whoever is his matchup defensively has to make him work. I wouldn't like. This is one of those games where we have to make sure to put Jabari set a screen, put Christian Wood in pick and roll, I think that could be a lot of generated easy points for Scoot if he plays, or Malcolm if he plays. It's gonna be we have to attack their weak. If we're trying to win, we have to attack the weakness of Christian Wood's defense when he plays any possessions. So I would involve him in everything, just like Memphis did with Da. Just force him to defend.
Yeah,
For the
DA's got
entire
to
time.
stay out of foul trouble too.
Yeah, I honestly think Jabari could. I really really believe in Jabari defensively. I think he could really frustrate Christian Wood because of how just strong Jabari is. I think that could frustrate him because he's strong and just couldn't push Christian's skinny ass out of the way. So I hope Jabari takes this as a challenge and just dominates Christian Wood.
I've got the Lakers winning.
Yeah, Lakers
I
win.
think pretty easily as well. And I think that wraps up this episode. You got some food to eat. I've got a baby to corral, and we will see you all next week. Sage, let our listeners know where they can find us.
We are available on iTunes, Stitcher, everywhere where you get your podcast. We are there. Check us out. Holy Backboard. I'm writing more this year with on the blog holybackboard.com. Check out the returning college players article that I wrote. We are also on IG at Holy Backboard, and Facebook as well, and then TikTok. Check us out at the Sage HB. All of our short form content will be there, and we have a clothing store, so I will put that in the description of it. But it's Holy Backboard, and the creation site is Printify. So if you want to get your Holy Backboard black logo hat or T-shirt or sweatshirt, it's absolutely there. I'll try and make it so it's free shipping for all of the people that type in Holy Backboard at checkout. So check us out everywhere. We're really out there producing content in 2023, 2024. So peace out, everybody.